My name is Alexandra Pierce, but everyone calls me Alex. I'm 29, and for as long as I can remember, my entire world has revolved around the deep, satisfying rumble of a classic V8 engine. It took me 5 solid years of working grueling 70-hour weeks to finally afford my one true love, a pristine raven black 1967 Mustang Fastback. While my family has always claimed to be supportive, their understanding of personal boundaries is flexible, to say the least. I just never conceived of a world where I'd come back from a career-defining business trip to find my pride and joy simply vanished. When I demanded to know where it was, my mother actually had the audacity to smirk. "Thanks to that car," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction, "our daughter is finally getting the break she deserves." A laugh, sharp and incredulous, escaped my lips, and her smile instantly vanished. "What could possibly be funny right now?" she snapped. "Before I reveal what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever had family members who treat your hard-earned property like a community chest, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Believe me, you'll want to see how this disaster unfolded. My fascination with vintage steel and raw horsepower started when I was about 7. Every Saturday, without fail, my grandfather would pull up in his beat-up old pickup, the engine chugging like a friendly giant. He'd take me to his workshop, a sanctuary filled with the smell of motor oil, metal, and sawdust, where he breathed life back into forgotten automobiles. Those mornings were my church. While other kids were glued to cartoons, I was learning the difference between a wrench and a ratchet, how to gap spark plugs, and the unique symphony of a perfectly tuned engine. "Alex," my grandfather would say, using the nickname he'd given me, "these aren't just machines. They've got stories. They've got souls." I believed every word, especially when he unveiled his most treasured projects. He saw a spark in me that my own parents seemed determined to extinguish. My parents, Mark and Helen, just never got it. My interest in mechanics was, in their words, unladylike. "Why can't you take up ballet or maybe watercolors?" My mother would sigh dramatically whenever I'd walk in with a fresh layer of grease under my fingernails. My father would just offer a weary shake of his head, a look of profound confusion mixed with a dash of disappointment clouding his face. But for my sister Chloe, it was a completely different story. 4 years my junior, Chloe was everything they wanted in a daughter. She was delicate, conventionally feminine, and her interests were appropriately girly. When she expressed a passing interest in dance at age 6, my parents practically tripped over themselves to enroll her in the most prestigious studio in town. When I begged for an auto mechanics course at 12, my mother scoffed, claiming we couldn't possibly afford unnecessary extracurriculars that year. This blatant double standard became the soundtrack of our childhood. Chloe was showered with designer outfits. I was given her outgrown clothes. Chloe's 16th birthday was a catered affair with 100 guests. Mine was a grocery store cake and a card. For her high school graduation, Chloe was gifted a brand new sedan. I was handed a stack of financial aid forms and a stern lecture on the crushing weight of student loans. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. None of this was her fault, not directly anyway, but the glaring disparity in our upbringing was a chasm that was impossible to ignore. I left for college the first chance I got, dead set on forging my own destiny. I juggled 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a perfect GPA in my finance program. After graduation, I secured a demanding position at a high-powered investment firm in Boston. The hours were soul-crushing, but the paycheck made it bearable. I lived like a monk, sharing a cramped apartment with 2 roommates and subsisting on a diet of instant noodles and brown-bagged lunches. Every single spare dollar was funneled into a savings account with a singular holy purpose: my dream car. While my colleagues were flaunting designer watches and jetting off to Bali, I remained laser-focused on the prize. It took 5 years of relentless 70-hour weeks, a non-existent social life, and iron-willed financial discipline. And then one day, after scrolling through countless online forums and auction sites, I found her. A 1967 Mustang Fastback, black as midnight, with a chrome trim that gleamed like a promise. My grandfather had passed away 2 years prior, but as I drove that car down the highway for the first time, I could feel his presence in the passenger seat beside me. "We did it, Grandpa," I whispered, tears of joy and grief streaming down my face. That car was so much more than a purchase. It was a monument to my resilience, my independence, and a tangible link to the one man who had always, unconditionally, believed in me. My boyfriend, Liam, understood this on a cellular level. We met at a classic car show about 6 months after I bought the Mustang. He owned a stunning replica of a 1967 Fastback, a fact that became an instant bridge between us. Unlike my family, Liam got it. He understood the deep satisfaction of spending a Saturday afternoon under the hood, changing your own oil rather than wandering aimlessly through a shopping mall. He respected the immense sentimental value tied to my car and shared my passion for preserving these beautiful pieces of automotive history. For 2 glorious years, that Mustang was my sanctuary. I treated it like a delicate work of art, driving it only on days with perfect weather and ensuring it was properly stored away during Boston's brutal winters. I never once dreamed that the most significant threat to my beloved car wouldn't come from a thief or the harsh New England elements, but from the very people I was supposed to trust most. The summons came on a Tuesday afternoon. My boss, Ms. Albright, wanted to see me in her office, effective immediately. As I made the long walk down the corridor to her expansive corner office, my heart hammered against my ribs. I ran through a dozen worst-case scenarios. Was I being fired? Did I make a catastrophic error on the Henderson account? "Alexandra," Ms. Albright said as I stepped inside, her expression utterly unreadable. "How's your British English?" I blinked, completely thrown. "It's proficient. I watch a lot of BBC." She gave a short, satisfied nod. "Good enough. I need you in London. Patterson Financial is looking to expand their European portfolio, and they've specifically asked for a consultant who understands both American and UK business etiquette." This was monumental. Patterson Financial was a whale, a potential client that could bring millions into our firm. Securing their business would mean a massive bonus, a promotion, and a serious fast track for my career. The senior partners and I are in agreement. You're the best person for the job. You'll lead the presentation team in London. I was stunned into silence. I was being chosen over senior colleagues who had decades more experience than me. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. "It's a 3-week trip," she continued. "You leave on Friday. My assistant will forward you all the details." 3 weeks. It was the longest I'd ever be away from home. As thrilled as I was, my thoughts immediately turned to my Mustang. My Boston neighborhood had recently been hit by a string of car thefts, and the idea of leaving my baby unprotected for that long filled me with a cold dread. After weighing my options, I decided the only truly safe place would be at my parents' house in the quiet suburbs. They had a large, secure garage in a neighborhood with virtually no crime. Despite our complicated history, I figured I could trust them to at least provide a safe haven for my car. That Thursday evening, I made the 45-minute drive to their house. My dad was out front, trimming the hedges, and he paused to admire the Mustang as I pulled into their driveway. "Still a beauty," he remarked, running a hand over the polished hood. Your grandfather would be so proud." My mom appeared at the doorway, wiping her hands on an apron. "Alex, what a nice surprise. Are you staying for dinner?" I explained about the London trip and asked if I could leave the car in their garage for the 3 weeks. "Of course, sweetheart," Dad said without hesitation. "We've got plenty of space since Chloe took all her stuff to her new apartment." "That's wonderful news about your trip, dear," Mom added, though her tone suggested she didn't quite grasp the magnitude of the opportunity. "But 3 weeks is such a long time. Will your boss get upset if you fly home for a weekend in between?" I patiently explained that international business deals didn't quite work like that, and she eventually seemed to let it go. As Dad helped me guide the Mustang into the garage, I gave him a meticulous list of instructions. "It needs to be started once a week. Just let it idle for about 15 minutes, but please do not drive it. The insurance is very specific. And make sure you use this cover," I said, handing him the custom-fitted, fleece-lined car cover I'd brought. "And whatever you do not let anyone else even touch it." "Alex, I know how to look after a car," Dad said, a hint of offense in his voice. "I'll treat it like it's made of solid gold." "I know, Dad, I just worry. This car, it means everything to me." Later that evening, Chloe joined us for dinner. She had recently graduated from college and was working as a receptionist at a small marketing firm, her first real job. The entire meal was a monologue about how overworked and underappreciated she was, and how desperately she needed a vacation. "All my friends are planning this incredible trip to the Greek islands," she sighed dramatically. "But there's just no way I can afford it on my salary. Life is so unfair." I bit down hard on my tongue, the memory of my 3-job college marathon flashing through my mind. Mom predictably clucked in sympathy and suggested that Dad might be able to help her out financially. "We'll see," Dad said non-committal. "Money's a bit tight with the kitchen remodel." Before I left, I called Liam to finalize our secret security measure. We had discussed swapping our cars as an extra layer of protection. His replica Mustang was nearly identical to mine from a distance, but was worth significantly less. "I'll swing by your parents' place tomorrow afternoon and make the switch," he confirmed. "I'll take great care of your girl. They'll never even know the difference." "You're the best," I told him, a wave of relief washing over me. "I'll call you as soon as I land in London." The next morning, I boarded my flight, confident that my car was in the safest possible hands. Little did I know, my careful plan was about to ignite a firestorm that would irrevocably alter my family's landscape. Throughout my 3 weeks in London, I checked in with my parents regularly. They always assured me everything was fine, though in the last few days of my trip, my mother's texts became strangely evasive. "We have a huge surprise for you when you get home," she wrote, which I dismissed as a plan for a welcome home dinner or some other trivial gesture. The London presentation was a phenomenal success. The Patterson executives were blown away by our proposal, and by the end of the second week, they had signed a contract worth over $15 million to our firm. At the celebratory dinner on my final night, Ms. Albright all but confirmed a major promotion was waiting for me back in Boston. "Vice President has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" she said with a sly wink. I boarded my return flight feeling like I was on top of the world. I couldn't wait to get home, take my Mustang for a long celebratory drive along the coast, and share my incredible news with Liam and my family. The long flight home was filled with daydreams of my triumphant return. If only I'd had an inkling of the nightmare that was waiting for me. My plane touched down at Logan Airport at 2:15 p.m. on a bright Tuesday afternoon. After clearing customs and grabbing my suitcase, I took a cab straight to my parents' house. I was bone-tired from the flight, but the thought of seeing my beautiful Mustang again had me buzzing with energy. "Just another 10 minutes, I texted Liam, who had promised to meet me there so we could swap our cars back. As the taxi turned onto my parents' quiet suburban street, a knot of excitement tightened in my chest. The driver pulled into the driveway, and my brow furrowed. Something was off. The garage door was wide open, revealing my dad's sedan and my mom's SUV, but there was no sign of a Mustang. Maybe they moved it, I muttered to myself, paying the driver and rolling my suitcase towards the front door. My mother opened it before I could even ring the bell, enveloping me in a hug that I barely returned, my mind still fixated on the empty space in the garage. "Welcome home, sweetheart. How was your flight?" "Fine," I said, my voice distracted. "Mom, where's my car?" A strange, unreadable expression flickered across her face, a bizarre mix of defensiveness and something that looked unnervingly like glee. She ushered me inside without answering my question. Dad was in his recliner, pretending to read the newspaper. He looked up as I entered, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Dad, where is my Mustang?" I asked again, more forcefully this time, a cold dread beginning to pool in my stomach. He cleared his throat and shot a nervous glance at my mom, who was suddenly very busy arranging cookies on a plate, as if this were just any other day. "Well, honey," he began, his voice pitched unnaturally high, "something came up while you were away." The knot in my stomach cinched tighter. What does that mean? Where is my car? My mother finally turned from the counter, her chin lifting in that defiant way it always did when she was about to defend the indefensible. "Chloe needed a little help," she said, her voice firm. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity came up. I stared at her, the words not computing. "What does that have to do with my car?" "Thanks to your car," my mother said, that smug grin returning. "Our daughter is having the time of her life." She whipped out her phone and shoved it in my face, showing me Chloe's Instagram page. There was my sister, grinning from the deck of a massive cruise ship in the middle of the Mediterranean, a colorful cocktail in one hand, designer sunglasses on her face, looking utterly carefree. The pieces slammed into place with a sickening, horrifying clarity. "You sold my car?" The words were a strangled whisper. I was too stunned to even raise my voice. "Now, Alex," Dad began, adopting his placating tone, "try to understand. Chloe was having a really tough time at work. All her friends were going on this cruise, and she was going to be the only one left behind. It would have been devastating for her." "So you sold my car?" This time I shouted, my voice cracking with pure disbelief. "You can always buy another car," Mom said dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. "You make good money." Chloe needed this. She needed to network with the right kind of people, make connections for her future. I felt the room start to tilt. My hands began to tremble as the full weight of their betrayal crashed down on me. "That car was registered in my name. You had no legal right to sell it." My parents exchanged another shifty glance. "Well, technically," Dad mumbled, avoiding my eyes, "we told the buyer you had authorized us to handle the sale on your behalf." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel the pulse in my temples. The room seemed to be spinning as I struggled to process their casual cruelty. "Do you have any idea what that car meant to me?" My voice broke. It wasn't just a thing. It was my connection to Grandpa. It was 5 years of my life, of sacrifice. "It's just a car, Alexandra," Mom snapped, her tone hardening. "Family is what's important. Chloe is your sister. She needed this. And I don't matter. My feelings, my property, my boundaries, none of that means anything." "Don't be so dramatic," Mom scoffed. "You've always been so obsessed with material things. Chloe has been struggling with depression. This cruise was therapeutic for her." Depression? I echoed, incredulous. Since when? She's been under a lot of stress at work, Dad offered weakly. Her boss is very demanding. I let out a harsh, humorless laugh. Welcome to being an adult. I worked 70-hour weeks for 5 years to buy that car. Did you ever once consider selling your own possessions to make my life a little easier? That's different, Mom said, her voice rising defensively. You've always been the strong one. Chloe is more sensitive. She needs more support. The hypocrisy was so staggering, it left me breathless. For a long moment, I just stood there, vibrating with a rage so profound it felt like a physical force. Then a practical thought cut through the red haze. How much did you sell it for? I demanded. More uncomfortable glances were exchanged. Finally, Dad answered. $55,000. I gasped. $55,000. That car was appraised at over $90,000. Did you even bother to do any research before you sold it? The buyer said it was a fair price, Dad muttered. We had to move fast before you got back. That admission, so blatant in its treachery, hit me like a punch to the gut. They had intentionally rushed the sale to present me with a done deal. They knew exactly what they were doing. Who did you sell it to? I asked, fighting to keep my voice from shaking. Some collector from New Hampshire, Mom said vaguely. I don't remember his name. Just then my phone buzzed with a text. It was Liam. Just pulled up. Where's the Mustang? And suddenly, in the swirling vortex of my anger and heartbreak, a single, brilliant realization dawned. A realization that was about to change everything. The text from Liam was like a key turning in a lock, triggering a memory that had been shoved aside by the initial shock of my parents' betrayal. A low chuckle started in my chest, growing louder until it filled the tense silence of the room. The sound was alien even to my own ears. It wasn't an expression of joy, but a release of unbearable pressure. My mother's face twisted in a mask of confusion and anger. What is so funny about your sister's happiness? She demanded. I took a deep, steadying breath, trying to get a grip on myself. You know what's funny, Mom? What's funny is that you stole and sold a car that wasn't even mine to begin with. My dad's brow furrowed. What are you talking about? We saw you drive it here ourselves. I held up a single finger, a silent signal for them to wait, and stepped outside. Liam was standing in the driveway, a look of bewilderment on his face. After a quick whispered exchange, he followed me back inside, his curiosity now piqued. Mom, Dad, I believe you remember Liam, I said, gesturing to my boyfriend. He gave my parents a curt nod, his expression cold and guarded. Of course, my mother said impatiently. Alex, what do you mean the car wasn't yours? I smiled, a strange sense of calm settling over me like a shroud. The car you sold wasn't my 1967 Mustang Fastback. It was Liam's replica. The blood drained from my parents' faces as I laid out the car-swapping arrangement Liam and I had made for security. The day after I flew to London, Liam had driven to their house as planned and switched his near-identical replica for my authentic, numbers-matching classic. To the casual observer, they were indistinguishable. But Liam's car, while beautiful, was worth around $35,000, not the $90,000 my own car was appraised for. So, you see, I concluded, my voice dangerously calm, you didn't sell my car. My car has been sitting safely in Liam's climate-controlled garage for the past 3 weeks. What you actually did was sell Liam's car without his knowledge or permission. But it looked exactly the same, my father stammered, his face ashen. That was the whole point, Liam said, speaking for the first time, his voice like flint. They're meant to look identical from the outside. But mine is a modern replica, built in 2008 to look like a 67. Alex's is the real deal, an authentic classic worth almost 3 times as much. "Oh my God," my mother whispered, collapsing into a nearby armchair. "What have we done?" "You've committed fraud," I stated flatly. "You sold property that didn't belong to you or to me. You forged my signature on documents. You lied to the buyer." "We could go to jail," Dad said, his voice barely a croak. "Yes," Liam confirmed, his voice hard as steel. "You absolutely could. Grand theft auto over $25,000 is a Class B felony in this state. Add mail and wire fraud to the list. You're looking at serious prison time for each charge." My mother began to sob, loud, theatrical wails that in the past might have guilted me into comforting her. Not this time. "How were we supposed to know it wasn't your car?" she cried. "You tricked us." "I didn't trick you," I corrected her sharply. "I took a reasonable precaution to protect my most valuable asset, because on some level, I knew I couldn't trust my own family." And clearly, I was right. "You have to help us fix this," Dad pleaded, looking suddenly frail and much older than his 60-something years. "We can't go to prison. We didn't know. Ignorance of the law is not a defense," Liam pointed out coldly. "And neither is misguided family loyalty. You stole my car without my permission. That's theft. End of story." My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Is this Alexandra Pierce?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Arthur Henderson. I recently purchased a 1967 Mustang Fastback from your parents, supposedly on your behalf. There seems to be an issue with the title transfer." My eyes locked onto my parents, who were watching me with a look of pure, primal fear. In that instant, I held all the cards. I could detonate the bomb right then and there, tell this man the unvarnished truth about their crimes. Or I could play for time, orchestrate a solution that would deliver a harsh dose of justice without completely annihilating my family. "Mr. Henderson," I said carefully, "there has indeed been a major misunderstanding. Would it be possible for me to call you back in an hour? I need to sort out some details with my parents." He agreed, and I hung up, turning back to the two terrified faces in front of me. "That was your buyer," I informed them. "He's having trouble with the title, likely because the car is registered to Liam, not me. So now we have a decision to make." "Please, Alex," Mom begged, her mascara-streaked face a mess of tears and desperation. "Please help us. We never meant to hurt anyone." "Except me," I pointed out. "You were perfectly fine with hurting me." "We thought you'd understand," Dad said weakly. "Family helps family." "Is that right?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Well then, I guess it's your turn to help Liam, since you're the ones who stole from him." My parents looked over at Liam, a new wave of fear washing over them, as they finally realized their fate was not just in my hands, but in his as well. "What do you want us to do?" Dad asked, addressing him directly. Liam crossed his arms, his expression uncompromising. "First, I want the name and contact information for the man who has my car. Then we'll start discussing how you're going to make this right." As my parents scrambled to find the buyer's details, I stepped outside with Liam. Standing in the driveway where my Mustang should have been, we spoke in low tones. "I can't believe they did this," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Your own parents." "Believe it," I said grimly. "They've always put Chloe on a pedestal. I just never imagined they'd sink this low. Do you want to press charges? Because we can, and we would absolutely win." I let out a long, shuddering sigh. I don't want to see my parents in prison, but I can't let them get away with this. They need to learn once and for all that their actions have severe consequences. Liam nodded, his hand finding mine. "We'll figure it out. Together." When we went back inside, my parents were hunched over Dad's phone, having located the buyer's information and the digital purchase agreement. The stark reality of their predicament was clearly dawning on them, their faces pale and etched with worry. "We found it," Dad said, holding out the phone. I took it without a word and began reviewing the documents with Liam. The situation was even more of a disaster than I'd realized. They hadn't just forged my signature, they had created a fraudulent bill of sale using an incorrect vehicle identification number. "This is a complete train wreck," Liam muttered. "They've created a paper trail of felonies that doesn't even match the actual vehicle." My mother started sobbing again. "We don't know anything about VIN numbers and paperwork. We just wanted to help Chloe." "Well, congratulations," I said coldly. "You've successfully committed multiple felonies, sold property you didn't own, and quite possibly torched your relationship with your only responsible daughter, all to send Chloe on a vacation she didn't earn and couldn't afford." "What are you going to do?" Dad asked, his voice barely a whisper. I looked at Liam, then back at my parents. "We are going to call Mr. Henderson back, and you are going to tell him exactly what you did." After leaving my parents' house, I drove my actual Mustang Fastback, which had been perfectly safe in Liam's garage all along, straight to his apartment. The familiar throaty purr of the engine usually calmed me, but my mind was a tempest of rage and disbelief. Liam followed in his daily driver, and we convened in his living room to map out our next move. The full scope of the situation was finally settling in. My parents had not only shattered my trust in the most profound way imaginable, but they had also committed serious crimes that could land them in prison. And somewhere on the Aegean Sea, my sister was sipping cocktails, blissfully ignorant of the hurricane she had unleashed. "I still can't wrap my head around it," I said, pacing back and forth on Liam's hardwood floor for what felt like the 100th time. "Who sells someone else's car?" Liam was on the couch, his face a storm of anger and concern for me. "People who feel entitled," he answered simply. "People who believe the world owes them something, and that boundaries don't apply to them." "That's the understatement of the year," I said, finally collapsing onto the couch beside him. "The worst part is, they genuinely don't think they did anything wrong. They keep hiding behind this twisted idea of family and helping Chloe, as if that's some magical excuse for grand theft and fraud." "What do you want to do about the buyer, this Henderson guy?" Liam asked. "He's the real innocent victim in this." I nodded. "We have to call him back. I think we need to be completely honest, but frame it as a colossal family misunderstanding for now, at least until we have a solid legal strategy." Just as we were about to dial, my phone began to buzz incessantly. My parents had been calling and texting nonstop. I ignored them, but one message from my mother caught my eye. "Your Aunt Carol thinks you are being selfish and vindictive." "Oh, fantastic," I groaned, showing Liam the text. "They're already poisoning the well and rallying the troops." Sure enough, less than an hour later, my phone rang. It was my mother's older sister, Aunt Carol. "Alexandra Marie," she began, using my full name, a surefire sign a lecture was imminent. "What is all this I'm hearing about you threatening your own parents with prison over a silly car? After everything they've done for you?" I took a deep, calming breath. "Aunt Carol, with all due respect, you don't have the full story. I know enough. Your mother is an absolute wreck. They were only trying to do something nice for your sister, and now you're talking about lawyers and criminal charges. What kind of a daughter are you?" "The kind whose parents stole property worth over $30,000, I replied, my voice dangerously level. "And it wasn't even my property. It was my boyfriend's. They committed multiple felonies, Aunt Carol. This isn't about being ungrateful." She scoffed dismissively. Family is supposed to help family, Alexandra. You've always been so stubborn, so unwilling to compromise. Would it really have killed you to let your sister have this one little thing? The conversation devolved from there, with my aunt stubbornly defending my parents, completely unable or unwilling to grasp the legal and ethical gravity of their actions. By the time I hung up, I was shaking with rage. Family helps family, I mimicked bitterly to Liam. Funny how that rule only ever seems to apply when I'm the one being asked to sacrifice something. Liam squeezed my hand reassuringly. Not everyone in your family is like that. What about your Uncle Ben, your grandfather's brother? You've always said he was the reasonable one. Uncle Ben had been my grandfather's closest confidant and had always treated me with a warmth and respect that was absent from my parents. When I called and laid out the entire sordid tale, his reaction was a balm to my frayed nerves. "They did what?" he exclaimed, his voice crackling with indignation. "They sold Liam's car without his permission? That's not just wrong, Alex. That's criminal. You have every right to be furious. His validation meant more to me than I could say. Everyone else seems to think I should just let it go because they're family." "Being family doesn't give you a free pass to break the law," Uncle Ben said firmly. "And it certainly doesn't give you the right to trample all over someone's life. Your grandfather would be spinning in his grave." After that call, I felt a little more grounded, but the emotional toll of the day was catching up to me. Liam suggested we order in some food and shelve any major decisions until we were both thinking more clearly. As we sat on his floor eating pizza out of the box, Liam looked at me thoughtfully. "Can I ask you a hypothetical?" "Shoot. If they had actually sold your real Mustang, what would you have done?" I put down my slice and considered the question. Honestly, I think I would have pressed charges without a second thought. That car, it's not just metal and paint to me. It's the last piece I have of my grandfather. It's a symbol of every sacrifice I ever made to build my own life. I don't think I could have ever forgiven that. And now it's complicated. They still committed a crime, but it was against you, not me directly. And as awful as what they did was, I don't know if I can be the one to send them to prison. They're still my parents. Liam nodded slowly. "I get it. And for the record, I don't want to see your parents behind bars either. But they have to make this right. They need to learn, in no uncertain terms, that there are real, painful consequences for their actions." We talked late into the night, weighing our options. Eventually, we agreed that our first step had to be consulting a lawyer. Sleep was elusive that night. I tossed and turned, my mind a chaotic slideshow of the day's events, my heart torn between a burning desire for justice and the gut-wrenching thought of my parents in jail. Morning brought a fresh crisis. My parents appeared at my apartment building, unannounced, looking sleepless and desperate. "Alex, please," my mother begged when I reluctantly buzzed them in. "You have to help us. We can't eat. We can't sleep. We're terrified. You should have considered the consequences before you decided to become car thieves," I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. "We know we made a terrible mistake," Dad said, his voice cracking. "We'll do anything to make it right." I looked at their panicked faces, feeling a toxic cocktail of rage, pity, and sheer exhaustion. "It's not that simple. What you did wasn't just a mistake. It was illegal, and the decision isn't just up to me. The car you sold belongs to Liam." "We'll pay him back," Mom said quickly, "every last cent." "And where exactly are you going to get $35,000? I asked, my skepticism clear. "You just told me money was tight because of the kitchen remodel." They exchanged a nervous glance. "We'll figure it out," Dad insisted. "We'll take out a second mortgage if we have to. Whatever it takes." I sighed, the sound heavy with the weight of it all. Look, we're meeting with a lawyer this afternoon to discuss our options. I have nothing more to say to you until then. Please, Alex, Mom pleaded. At least tell us you won't press charges. We can't go to jail. We just can't. That's not a promise I'm willing to make right now, I said firmly. You need to leave. I'll call you after we've spoken with our lawyer. As I shut the door on their retreating figures, I leaned against it, feeling utterly drained. Whatever path we chose, I knew one thing for sure. My relationship with my parents would never be the same again. At 2 p.m., Milia, Zrania, Liam, and I were seated in the sleek, modern office of Alicia Ramirez, a sharp criminal defense attorney I knew through a corporate charity board. When I'd called her that morning, she had immediately cleared her schedule for us. Okay, let me just confirm the facts, Alicia said, looking over her notes. Your parents, without consent, sold Liam's car, which they believed to be yours. They forged your signature on a fraudulent bill of sale, provided an incorrect VIN to the buyer, and then used the $55,000 in proceeds to finance your sister's European vacation. Is that a fair summary? That's it in a nutshell, I confirmed. Alicia leaned back, her expression serious. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Your parents are facing multiple felony charges, including grand theft auto and wire fraud. Given their ages and clean records, they might get leniency, but significant prison time is a very real possibility if charges are filed. Liam and I exchanged a worried glance. The words prison time were hard to hear, no matter how angry I was. What are our options? I asked. Legally, you have a few paths, Alicia explained. 1. You press criminal charges and let the justice system run its course. 2. You pursue a civil case, suing them for the value of the car plus damages. Or 3. You attempt to handle this privately, outside of the courts. What would a private resolution look like? Liam asked. Essentially, you draft a legally binding settlement agreement where your parents provide financial restitution and agree to any other terms you set. It wouldn't erase their criminal acts, but without a formal complaint from you, it's highly unlikely the district attorney would pursue the case. And the buyer? I asked. Mr. Henderson is an innocent party who was defrauded. Alicia nodded. That's the major complication. The cleanest, quickest way to resolve this is to unwind the sale entirely. Give him his money back and get the car back. But that requires your parents to produce $55,000. Fast. They mentioned a home equity loan I offered. That could work, but time is of the essence. The longer Mr. Henderson has that car, the greater the chance he discovers the title fraud on his own and reports it to the authorities himself. We left Alicia's office with a clear, albeit daunting, plan. We would attempt a private resolution, starting with a frank conversation with Mr. Henderson. We should meet him in person, Liam suggested as we walked to the parking garage. This isn't news you deliver over the phone. I agreed. We called Mr. Henderson and arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop halfway between Boston and his home in New Hampshire. Next on the agenda was tracking down my sister. Chloe had been posting a continuous stream of carefree photos from her cruise, completely oblivious to the inferno raging back home. It took several attempts, but I finally got through to her on the ship's expensive satellite phone. Alex? She answered, the sound of poolside music and laughter in the background. Why are you calling? Is everything okay? No, Chloe, nothing is okay, I said, my voice tight. Mom and Dad sold a car to pay for your trip, a car that they didn't own. There was a brief pause, then she laughed. Oh, is that it? I thought someone was dying or something. Look, I know you're probably mad they sold your precious car, but you can afford to buy a new one. Her casual dismissal made my blood run cold. It wasn't my car they sold, Chloe. It was Liam's. What they did was a crime. They could go to jail. That finally pierced her bubble of self-absorption. Jail? Don't be ridiculous. They were just trying to help me out. By committing theft and fraud. Those are felonies, Chloe. Serious ones. So what are you saying? Her voice had lost its breezy tone, replaced by a note of alarm. I'm saying you need to come home. Now your little Mediterranean fantasy is over, but the cruise doesn't dock for another week. Then you get off at the next port and you buy a plane ticket, I said, my voice like ice. This is not a negotiation, Chloe. You helped create this mess, and you are going to help clean it up. I didn't create any mess. I didn't ask them to sell a car, didn't you? Because Mom seems to recall you talking nonstop about how depressed you were, how devastated you'd be to miss this trip. The telling silence on the other end of the line was all the confirmation I needed. That's what I thought. Get home, Chloe, and you'd better be ready to contribute to the repayment plan. The next day's meeting with Arthur Henderson was as tense as expected. He was a middle-aged car enthusiast who was justifiably furious when we explained the situation. So, let me get this straight, he said, his face flushing with anger. You're telling me I paid $55,000 for a stolen car with forged paperwork? Technically, yes, I admitted. Though my parents were under the delusional belief that they had the right to sell it. That's not how any of this works, he fumed. This is a nightmare. I've already registered it, insured it. We understand, Liam said calmly, and we want to make it right. We are prepared to offer you a full refund of the $55,000 plus an additional $5,000 to compensate you for your time, trouble, and any expenses you've incurred. The offer seemed to take some of the wind out of his sails. And the car? We would need it returned, of course, I explained. It's legally Liam's property. After a bit more negotiation, Mr. Henderson agreed to our terms on the condition that the full $60,000 be wired to his account before he would release the car. Now all we had to do was get my parents to come up with $60,000. When we laid out the deal for my parents, they were simultaneously relieved to avoid legal charges and horrified by the price tag. $60,000, my mother repeated, aghast. Where are we supposed to find that kind of money? You mentioned a home equity loan, I reminded her, or you could sell some of your assets. You created this problem, Mom. It's up to you to solve it. But we don't have that much equity in the house, Dad protested. Not with the market and the cost of the new kitchen. Then I suggest you get creative, Liam said firmly. Because right now, this settlement is the only thing standing between you and a felony indictment. We could probably scrape together $40,000, Dad offered after a whispered conference with Mom, but not 60. Liam just shook his head. Not good enough. The full amount must be repaid, plus compensation for the mess you made. If you can't cover it, perhaps Chloe should contribute, since she's the one sunning herself on a yacht paid for by theft. Chloe? Mom looked scandalized. But she's just starting out. She barely makes enough to cover her rent. Then she has no business going on luxury European cruises, does she? I retorted. Actions have consequences, Mom, for everyone, not just me. It took another 2 days of agonizing negotiations, but a plan was finally hammered out. My parents would take out the maximum home equity loan they could get, which was $40,000. Chloe, who had returned from her truncated vacation looking sullen and resentful, would be forced to contribute $10,000 from her savings, money I knew had been largely gifted to her by my parents over the years. The remaining $10,000 would come from the sale of my mother's extensive and expensive collection of jewelry. Liam added one final non-negotiable condition, a formal written apology, signed by both of them and notarized. acknowledging their crimes and promising to never again interfere with or make decisions about our property. My parents balked. An apology is one thing, Mom said, but a written legal document, take it or leave it, Liam said flatly. It's this, or we talk to the DA with no other choice. They agreed to all terms. Alicia drafted the settlement agreement, specifying the financial restitution and a strict payment timeline. The family meeting we held at my apartment to sign the papers was the most excruciating event of my life. Chloe, forced to confront the real-world consequences of her entitlement, alternated between defensive rage and tearful victimhood. "Why am I being punished for this?" she demanded. "I'm not the one who sold the car." "No," I replied calmly. "You just emotionally manipulated our parents into bankrolling a lifestyle you couldn't afford. You're 24 years old, Chloe, an adult. It's time you started acting like one. That's not fair. You've always been jealous of me because Mom and Dad love me more." The room fell into a dead silence at her childish outburst. Even my parents looked stunned. "Is that what you really think?" I asked quietly. "That this is about love?" "Well, they've always given me more," she said, her voice suddenly smaller. "They always protected me, made things easy for me. And look where that's gotten you," I said, my voice softening slightly. "You're 24, and you can't stand on your own 2 feet. You guilt them into bailing you out whenever life gets difficult. That's not love, Chloe. That's enabling." My mother started to protest, but for the first time in my life, my father put a hand on her arm, silencing her. He seemed to be truly seeing the situation clearly. "Alex is right," he said slowly, his voice heavy with regret. "We haven't done you any favors, Chloe. We thought we were protecting you, but all we did was keep you from learning how to be an adult." That unexpected admission from my father shifted the entire dynamic of the room. Over the next few hours, we had the most brutally honest conversation our family had ever had. There were tears, accusations, and painful truths, but by the end, something had broken open. It was like lancing a wound that had been festering for decades, finally allowing the healing process to begin. The following week was a blur of logistics. The loan was secured, Chloe's savings were transferred, my mother sold her jewelry, and Liam and I coordinated with Mr. Henderson to get the car back. The day my parents met Liam at the lawyer's office to deliver the notarized apology was stiff and painful. My mother, a woman whose pride was her primary characteristic, could barely get the words out. "We are truly sorry, Liam," my father finally said, stepping in. "What we did was inexcusable. It was illegal, disrespectful, and a complete violation of your trust and Alex's. We have no excuse." Liam accepted their apology with a quiet dignity. The documents were signed, the money was transferred, and Liam's car was returned, thankfully unharmed. As we drove away, Liam's replica Mustang in the rearview mirror, I felt a physical weight lift off my shoulders. The immediate crisis was over. "Thank you," I said to Liam, my hand finding his, "for being so patient through all of this." He squeezed my hand back. "That's what partners do. We get through the storms together." Looking at the familiar shape of the Mustang behind us, I allowed myself a small glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could rise from the ashes of this disaster. 1 month later, I found myself back at my parents' dining room table for a family dinner. The air was different, thick with a mixture of cautious hope and the lingering memory of our conflict. Dad brought a platter of grilled chicken to the table, his hands showing new calluses from the weekend construction job he'd taken on to help pay down the loan faster. Mom followed with a salad, her fingernails unpainted and trimmed short, her fingers conspicuously bare of the diamond rings she had sold. Chloe just texted, Mom said, checking her phone. Running about 10 minutes late. Traffic from her new job. My sister had started a new position as a junior associate at an ad agency. It paid less, but it was a real career track. To her credit, she hadn't uttered a single complaint about the long hours. Liam sat beside me, having accepted my parents' hesitant invitation. They needed to see us as a united front, to understand that a boundary violated against him was a boundary violated against me. The conversation at first was stilted, sticking to safe topics like sports and the weather. But slowly, a more meaningful dialogue began to emerge. Spoke to Uncle Ben yesterday, Dad mentioned. He's thinking of selling his old pickup. Says he's getting too old to keep it up. That's a shame, I replied. That truck's a classic. Dad nodded, then cleared his throat, looking at me with a new shyness. I was thinking maybe I could buy it from him. Fix it up. I was thinking maybe, if you were interested, we could work on it together. I know I never took an interest in your hobby before, but I'd like to learn if you'd be willing to teach me. The offer was a peace treaty. It wasn't about the truck. It was about him trying to enter my world, to understand the passion he'd once dismissed. I'd like that, Dad, I said sincerely. My mom watched the exchange with a small, sad smile. She'd been attending therapy with my dad, and the sessions were slowly helping her recognize her lifelong pattern of favoritism and boundary crossing. I have something for you, Liam, she said, retrieving a small gift bag. Inside was a professionally framed copy of the title to his replica Mustang, along with a handwritten note promising to respect our property and our autonomy. I had it framed, she explained quietly, as a reminder to myself. Boundaries matter. I'm learning. Thank you, Helen, Liam said, using her first name as she'd recently asked. I appreciate this. The front door opened, and Chloe rushed in. Sorry I'm late. Client meeting ran over. She looked different, more mature in her professional clothes. Her hair, its natural color. The biggest change was her demeanor. The sense of entitlement was gone, replaced by a quiet awareness. How was your day, Alex? She asked. Before the incident, she'd never shown the slightest interest in my career. Good, I replied. Busy. The Patterson account is a beast, but it's finally coming together. That's the one you went to London for, right? The one that got you the promotion? I nodded, surprised she remembered. Vice President of International Accounts. Still sounds weird to say it. That's amazing, she said, and for the first time, her voice held no trace of jealousy, only genuine admiration. As dinner continued, I watched my family through a new lens. The changes were small but monumental. Dad asking permission before putting more food on Mom's plate. Mom catching herself before trying to speak for Chloe. Chloe offering to clear the table without being asked. To an outsider, they were trifles. To me, they were signs of a seismic shift. After we finished dessert, my mother pulled me aside. I know I've said it 1,000 times, she began, her voice low, but I am so sorry, Alex. Not just for the car. For all the years I dismissed your passions, ignored your feelings, and violated your boundaries. I thought I was being a good mother by pushing you to be tough and shielding Chloe from hardship. I see now how deeply unfair I was to both of you. I looked at her face and saw real, unvarnished remorse. Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive us completely? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. I think forgiveness is a process, not an event. I'm working on it. Seeing you all actually trying, that helps. She nodded, accepting my honest, if incomplete, answer. As Liam and I drove home in my Mustang, The familiar rumble of the engine felt like a steady heartbeat. The car itself had been transformed in my mind. It was still my link to my grandfather, still a symbol of my hard work. But now it was also a catalyst, a painful, beautiful catalyst for change. "Penny for your thoughts," Liam said, noticing my quiet mood. "I was just thinking about how the things we love most can become a crucible," I replied. This car brought out truths about my family that were ugly and hard to look at, but they needed to be seen. "Do you regret how we handled it?" I shook my head. Number. It would have been easier to just let it go, to avoid the fight, but that would have just let the poison keep spreading. They needed to feel real consequences, and I needed to finally stand up for myself. "You found the right balance," Liam said. "You held them accountable without cutting them out of your life. That takes incredible strength." "And support," I added, squeezing his hand. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." The next morning I took the Mustang for a long drive along the coast, just as I had dreamed of doing on the flight home from London. But this time was different. As the salt-tinged wind whipped through my hair, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for years. The car was still an object of metal and glass, but its symbolism had deepened. It now represented not just my past, but my future, a commitment to my own self-worth, a refusal to be made small, even by the people who were supposed to love me most. Perhaps the greatest lesson was that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you stop loving your family. It means you love yourself and them enough to demand the respect that healthy relationships require. It's finding the courage to say, "This is not okay," while still leaving the door open for them to change. Pulling back into my parking spot, I thought about the difficult road our family was on. There would be setbacks, I was sure of it. But for the first time in my adult life, I felt truly hopeful. And that feeling, more than any classic car, was priceless. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family members who refused to respect your boundaries? How did you manage to hold them accountable while trying to preserve the relationship? Share your stories in the comments below, and please don't forget to like and subscribe if my journey resonated with you. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-preservation. Thank you for listening, and I hope this story gives you a little bit of strength to navigate your own family dynamics with both courage and compassion. End of story.